Namaste everyone, my name is Jatin Agarwal and today I actually want to talk about a watch brand that has become a fan favorite of late for the global watch community, which is Tudor. Now, being called poor man's Rolex was the absolute insult, I think, for this brand. However, the founder himself said that those who can't afford Rolex can probably buy a Tudor, and that is why Tudor was created. So, calling it a poor man's Rolex objectively was not wrong, but it never did justice to the brand. And today, that is why I want to talk about Tudor, because I think Tudor has taken the world by storm and now is actually delivering pieces that are desired by the watch community and that are in their collection. Before going on further into this video, I would like to say that for its price, I believe Tudor offers you the maximum watch any company can offer, from the movement, from the finishes, from the quality of the timepiece in particular. I think Tudor is absolutely kicking it out of the park, and there is nothing more that the brand can do in terms of sheer quality. Yes, there are things in terms of design that they can do more, which they have actually picked up recently as well. So for a watch company to be loved by watch lovers and the watch community in general, I think it has to do three things very well. The first has to be getting the design language right. If the watch doesn't appeal to the buyers, it will never be collected. To be very honest, the price does not matter if the watch does not appeal to the audience. So the watch has to appeal. And Tudor has been making those timepieces that are appealing not only in terms of design, because they have a very good design language, which I would say, and a lot of people would say, is kind of borrowed from Rolex, but there is nothing wrong with that considering how well Rolex watches are made and how desirable those watches are. So what I want to say is that Tudor has a very solid design language in my personal opinion, and that has also resonated with the audience, and that is why they're selling those watches. Now, the second thing is getting the price right. The first has to be design, the second has to be the price, in my opinion, right? And in design, I would also incorporate things such as build quality or the movement that they have. So it is basically the whole package that they're offering. The second has to be the price point. So you cannot sell things at absurd prices because they won't just sell. There are plenty of watch brands out there for the consumer to choose from, and that is why the brands have to get their pricing right. So a lot of good Tudor watches would cost you anywhere around 5 lakh rupees, and that is something absolutely wonderful that Tudor has done, because I think for that amount of money, Tudor is bringing you something that no other brand is. Yes, Omegas used to be priced a bit lower, and at that point of time, you could maybe compare Omega with Tudor, but currently the Tudor lineup, majority of the watches are at that price point, while Omega far exceeds that price point. And that is why I truly feel Tudor has done a tremendous job with its pricing. So after a brand has done these two things correctly, I think the third factor that actually becomes extremely important for a brand to be called a collectible and to have that kind of presence in the watch community is to have that factor. Now, the factor has been there with Tudor because recently they have released colors and watches that are desired, that are not needed, that are desired and wanted by the watch community. Being in limited quantity, these watches are not found by everyone, and this has actually increased their grey market premium. And even though this practice might sound very anti-consumer to a lot of watch lovers, but this is actually what creates that extra desire for a watch brand. This is what gives those watch brands an edge over the others, because there are again plenty of watches to choose from, plenty of watch brands out there. So Tudor has definitely done these three things right, and in my opinion, Tudor is therefore a watch brand that is now loved by all. Of course, getting the price right, getting the design language right, getting the product right is very, very important. But now having that factor is what gives Tudor a cult status, in my opinion. So Tudor watches are absolutely beautiful. It is no longer the poor man's Rolex, because a lot of watches that you get with Tudor, you can't get with Rolex right now. And I think there are a lot of watches that we actually want Rolex to release, but they release it under the Tudor umbrella, which I think is not wrong. Yes, Rolex stays a notch above, but the pricing is also a notch above. And again, the availability is very, very difficult for Rolex watches. You walk into an authorized dealer without a purchase history, you're not getting your Rolex, right? So in my opinion, Tudor watches are doing a lot of things right, and I hope to see them releasing more such watches in the future, which will continue to give them a cult status and which will be truly collectible watches which do not depreciate in value. Now, I know a lot of people do not like to talk about watches as investments, and I certainly do not myself see watches as an investment. However, who doesn't love to see their watches appreciate right out of the box? Who doesn't love to see the watch never depreciate? And that is something I believe gives these watches that cult status, and Tudor is right up there now because they have understood the market. They have released those watches that are loved by the audience, loved by the watch community, and they're doing a lot of things right. So in my opinion, Tudor remains no longer a poor man's Rolex. In fact, it is its own brand, it has its own heritage, and I absolutely love Tudor watches. I have a few in my collection. So thank you so much for watching this one. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye and Jai Hind.